right.
So, like,
Is it okay if we begin?
yeah, sure, like, whenever.
Hi. Okay, so we're here with Daniel Broudy, one of our professors at the university. Tell us about yourself. Like, what have you been researching? What you're interested in?
Okay. What I've been, I guess, researching over the past 20 years or so is how our attitudes, our values, and our perceptions of what's real, what's not real, how those are formed by the information that we consume.
Yeah.
And largely that information comes from the education system and the media system, so kind of all pervasive. I became interested in this area of research when I was doing my PhD in linguistics, and particularly in the area of psycholinguistics, and how words, for example, have a kind of emotional resonance. People are triggered by words, whether they're spoken words or written words, and they trigger emotional responses. And emotions very oftentimes override our logical sensibilities, our ability to reason. So this is kind of like, I guess, an ongoing interest of mine over many, many years.
Yeah. So we are currently researching about how social media and gatekeeping information is affecting our lives. And jumping into the questions, the first question I want to ask you is, what do you think is the cause, and why is social media affecting us so much nowadays?
Well, about causes, what seems to me, the reasons we're affected have so much to do with our values. A lot of scholars in the area of applied linguistics have written about this. The media, for example, that we consume, they inculcate the so-called right kinds of values so that as citizens or consumers in a culture, we're kind of like integrated into the institutional structures of the society.
Yeah.
And that the media are there to condition us to respond to the major signs and symbols in the appropriate ways. So there's a very dominant conditioning process in really any culture. It doesn't matter if you're, born and raised in North Korea or China, or these like more totalitarian, or in so-called democracies of the West. There is a system in place to create in people the right kinds of norms so that they respond in the most predictable ways. Human beings are very unpredictable creatures, so businesses and governments use techniques to increase predictability. And also, like, people, of course, we value knowledge naturally. We want to know what's going on. We value power. Lots of people value, various kinds of power. Like, power is exercised in many different ways through money and through social status. And we also value safety and security. Those are part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So I would say that social media is actually a kind of a misnomer. It's kind of misnamed because of all the major platforms that we engage with in social media. They are, they're actually owned by the corporate powers. So I don't think it's the right way to think about social media, because social media suggests that, we're free creatures to say what we believe is true and right. And we, I think, falsely believe that there will be no repercussions for speaking outside of the orthodoxies, right? The acceptable orthodoxies. I've kind of reflected a little bit on the question that you had put to me earlier, and I thought that the huge corporations, they've kind of actually have come to dominate our lives, and their job is to protect power. They're there to protect their power and actually their knowledge and their own safety from the masses, because I think that if the masses really understood what the world is really about, probably you'd find lots of cultures, nations around the world in upheaval. And people would be bringing out the pitchforks and the guillotines, Like, you see in France, a lot of people joke about this, but over the past 4 years, France has been in upheaval. So, we come into the world and we're conditioned by the media and schooling system at a very young age to accept the necessary illusions. And that illusion is really the story that money will, give you some kind of power. It will give you some kind of freedom. It will give you security from the forces of nature.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that when you learn about what money is and where it comes from, that throws into question so much of the, the conditioning that, we live in a so-called democracy, that we are free. Jean-Jacques Rousseau said that man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains. It seems to me that the major chains today are not physical chains, but they're more like mental chains. And it's really hard that powerful organizations have occupied your mind with a particular point of view or a particular narrative. It's very difficult to break out or to break those chains that are giving shape to your perceptions, your knowledge, and your awareness. So I think in the case of the social media, the chains, of course, they're concepts and beliefs whose values are reinforced by people at the top of the social pyramid. And who's at the top of the social pyramid? It's the people who own the world, the people who have the ability to reproduce the thing that we give our lives up in pursuit of, money. And also, of course, beyond the owners of the world, there are, the minions who support the owners by controlling what people say, what people think, how people act and respond to the narratives. So I think that's one of the reasons why in social media you see so much censorship today.
Yeah.
You can't question. I mean, if you engage with any kind of social media, Facebook, Twitter, the big ones like YouTube.
Yeah.
If you say something, anything that is counter to the accepted wisdom, for example, you only need to look at over the past 4.5 years to see how madness, insanity has kind of gripped the world, to understand the power of social media to affect how millions and millions and millions of people around the world respond to centers of power. Most people simply do what they're told. They don't think to ask serious questions. They shut up. They step in line. They receive all of the mandates that are forced upon them without question.
Yeah.
Because they want security. Another sort of one of the human needs, of course, is to have some safety and security. So how are people to reproduce their lives, when they live in a system, a media system, where empirical science, objective truth is actually managed for them? When lies are hidden from their sight, how are humans able to remain free? That's a big problem.
Yeah.
So I would say that social media, in a nutshell, it's a very deceptive way to talk about corporate media. That really, the sorts of media that really, really, truly dominate our thinking and our behavior. So, and big problem.
We've discussed on how social media is affecting us. Why are we being affected by this huge power? But I think most of us don't know that we're being controlled. Some of us do, some of us don't. But the question that I finally want to ask you is, we've discussed the problems, but what are the solutions? How can we have a better relationship with social media if we wanted to?
I think at this point in the research that I've done, for me at least, the only way to have a good relationship with social media is divorce. I might have told, this class or some other class, but I think it was maybe about 5 or 6 years ago when I began to see very unmistakable signs of societal collapse, general madness, zombie-like behavior. Just throughout our television, and that was kind of the first step. If you really want to fix the problem, you have to begin with yourself, and you have to try to delete every presupposition in your mind that believes without question that all is right in the world. If you want to gain some clarity of thought about the empirical world, what's really going on, this requires a fundamental deletion of the engagement that we have, the love affair that we have with these forms of media. When I was growing up, these things didn't exist.
Yeah.
Media was a one-way communication, and people who could see through the BS vented their frustrations with other human beings. There were social circles, there were pubs, there were places to meet and talk about the lies that were being perpetrated. So society was at that time much more social. And paradoxically, the social media has actually fractured society. Some cultures, you can see that, around the world have become more atomized, and you can see it with just about everything, like the cult of personal identity is a sign that societies have no social cohesion because each and every single person is a cult of themselves. The identity cult. So when you have a society like that, you just have a bunch of members with no collective sense of the common good. And, social media has had a huge hand in the fracturing of society and the fracturing of our minds. So I would say, how do we fix this? Yeah, we need to totally disconnect. I'm personally thinking about dumping my cell phone and, going back to the days when I would pick up the denwa. And, the phone has its place. Yeah. And if you want to make an electronic communication to some other human being, you have to go to that place. It's a physical place. If you want to have a social intercourse with someone, you meet and talk and share stories. Yeah. So that's the world that I grew up in. And I can see, when I look back, I can see how societies, my own society where I was born and raised, also in Japan, I spent 30 years. It's very easy to look back and see how everything is in free fall. So how do we regain some sense of ourselves in society? One way, it seems to me, the most logical way is to cut yourself free from the electronic environment and develop real relations with real human beings at the interpersonal level, because the electronic simulation that we're all in right now is truly dividing people. It's dividing societies and fracturing our... I mean, and I'm sure you've seen this, right? The zombies everywhere with their phones. And
especially like going to restaurants, you'll see like couples not even talking, they're just on their phones, even friends gatherings too. So
yeah,
I really understand.
There are plenty of examples to draw upon.
I think the people watching this are being like,
yeah. I'm sure when you were a kid, you probably remember those days when you were a kid where there was no such thing. Yeah. You didn't have a phone. Yeah. And, you could also, it's an easy argument that these devices are like the chains also. Yeah. They're physical, right? You feel like you have to have your phone with you wherever you go. These are chains.
They are. So. Yeah, I think like they're becoming like invisible handcuffs.
That's right.
Where we can't leave them at home. Like they have to be in our pockets.
That's exactly right. I would agree with that entirely.
I think most of the young generation, especially, can't detach from their phones. Like if say, like let's say hypothetically we wouldn't have our phones for a month, how many people do you think would survive?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
That's a really good question. These are the sorts of questions that you can set up experiments. These would be great in social psychology, even psychology. How do people respond when they're disconnected from the global central nervous system we call the internet?
Yeah.
There's a lot of really important research that still needs to be done because these technologies are so new. We're actually in an experiment. The experiments are really everywhere. There are social experiments, there are psychological experiments, there are medical experiments. I mean, we're just a big collection of guinea pigs.
Yeah.
And in order to remain free, we have to begin disconnecting ourselves from these really dominant influences. I don't envy this generation. So
I don't either.
Yeah,
I really love that, early 90s, 80s, late 80s kind of vibe.
yeah.
I still envy that generation that they got to live that, because I think what COVID-19 did to us, I think that was sort of an experiment as well for us to get more deep into the social media platform. Because all we could do was just stay home and open up our phones, because
That's right.
the world wasn't out there, it was over here.
That's right.
And so,
And then,
yeah.
exactly. And then, as I point out in a lot of the stuff that I write about, that might be the most comprehensive experiment in the history of humankind because it was global.
Yeah.
And lots of lessons learned about human behavior and human values and how thoroughly warped they are. Because it turns out that most people don't really care about an honest accounting of the world. They just want to be, safe and secure. So they'll just shut up and they'll do what they're told. And that's horrifying.
Yeah.
So, I think that's one of the reasons, maybe the principal reason why I answered your first question in that way. Our values will guide us when we're at war. War is a really good metaphor to describe what we're doing. A lot of people think we're in a race, but I would say we're in a war. We're in World War III. And the weapons are not bombs and bullets and bayonets and tanks and missiles. The weapons, we can scarcely see them. They're under a microscope. So that's a new kind of warfare.
Yeah.
The weapons are also psychological. So how do we regain what we've lost over the past 4 or 5 years? How do we do that? Disconnect. Establish real connections with real, authentic humans.
Well, I think we can keep going on this story for hours and hours, but I think we've gained a lot of information. I think the people that are watching had to go into this deep thought of what am I doing and what should I do?
Yeah.
And I hope that this interview actually inspires people to start thinking about those problems and the facts that we've spoken today. Look more deeply into it and, consider what our values are. It doesn't have to be through social media. It could be out here in the real world.
Yeah.
And so, I think this was a very, very great interview.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and joining
I hope
us today.
I hope what I said made sense. So.
Oh, it made a whole lot of sense. But thank you very much. ありがとうございます。
どういたしまして。